Yeah, we'll hold on.
Welcome back to the Big Fella Podcast. I'm your host, Noah Tanner. Welcome. Today we have a very special guest, the very humble, the very strong, the very handsome Tarun Budworth of Different Breed Coaching. He is an absolute demon over on Instagram. I will have all of his links available in the description. Today we are going to have a phenomenal conversation about the different branches of strength training, the difference between training like a bodybuilder just so you can look like you lift and having real applicable strength to the stuff that actually matters as a man, as a woman, as anybody in between. And we're going to have a lot of fun talking about our journeys, both getting into the strength training game and what athleticism and strength looks like in different types of bodies and journeys. So, Tarun, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Noah. That was a great introduction. That was really awesome. I don't know if I can set this up much better, but I'll introduce myself. So I'm Tarun, Coach Tarun on Instagram. I'm the founder of Different Breed. We're a coaching service that really the one-shot line is we're a coaching service that is trying to disrupt the online coaching industry by giving people coaching that is actually high quality and actually works, because we all know that a lot of online coaching is not that good, and we believe it is something that can truly change people's lives, and we are trying to do that through the pursuit of athleticism with all sorts of people and really just supporting them in that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and we could probably record 15 episodes about the state of the coaching industry right now as two experienced coaches. I love that your angle is athleticism. So today I wanted to kind of start the conversation. Like, I wanted to hear a little bit more about what got you into athleticism training in general, because I'll just give you a brief background about my training journey. Because for those of you that don't know, Tarun and I just met 4 minutes ago. So we have connections, we have mutual friends, and we reached out to we connected on Instagram. I reached out to him, we wanted to hop on. We're mutuals. He said hell yeah. So this is all brand new, first conversation together. But just a brief background about my training journey, because I'm very interested to hear yours, because they sound pretty different. I obviously come from the weight loss space. I was 300 pounds most of my life, and I lost all of my weight during COVID, lost 110 pounds due to extreme over-dieting and over-exercising, because I had nothing else to do at the time, because, lockdown, COVID, I was bored out of my mind, and video games get boring after 8 hours a day for so long, And so I kind of fell into this pipeline of the bodybuilding style of training and content on social media, because that's what was really popping here in the States. And there's a lot of really big creators that were popping off at that time on short form content. And it was just like the really popularized style of training. And I really enjoyed it because I was already so connected to changing the way my physique looked, right? Obviously, losing that much weight, you're going to transform how you look and how you feel. And I wanted to just kind of take that to the next level. And I told myself that I wanted to get into, eventually get into bodybuilding shows. But my focus has, over the past couple of years, since pivoted to more so of a endurance style training. I am, for some reason, fallen into the ultra marathon pipeline somehow. So now I'm running 20 miles for fun.
That's
don't know
impressive.
how I got
rather you than me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know why I like it so much, but it's getting colder here in Michigan, so it's getting harder to run when it's 10 degrees outside. But I digress. Yeah. But that's kind of where my journey comes from. It came from with strength training. I talk to a lot of people, as you do, I'm sure, of people are doing this from a vanity perspective. They want to feel more comfortable in their own skin, which isn't necessarily a bad thing by any means. They want to like the way they look. But I wanted to kind of hear your journey with training, because you've got a killer amount of strength and a very solid physique, and I wanted to see kind of where you chose to and why you chose athleticism as the primary focus for you, your company, and everything else you do.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, firstly, let me just echo that, wanting to have aesthetic goals and change the way you look, whether that's losing weight as you did or just looking good, I agree, is a great goal, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. It definitely gets slated a little bit, and I don't want to come across like there's no point in an aesthetic goal. I think people, are totally allowed to have those. But for me personally, my kind of like journey with sports started quite young. I'm not some sort of like phenom athlete as a young kid. I was a pretty sickly kid, but I was very hyperactive. And my mum just put me into lots of different sport clubs. So I did some gymnastics, I did some tennis, I did some rugby in school. Obviously British, we don't have football in the way you guys do, but rugby was very normal around where we were. So a little bit of that. I also then ended up dabbling in BMXing, cheerleading, eventually got into free running. So as a young guy, I did a lot of different things. And obviously I'm really small, but in my head, I'm massive. So especially as a youngster, I wanted to keep up. So I'd push myself quite hard, and my granddad always used to train. So got some dumbbells at like 14, started running, doing a bit more alongside these sports. And at that point it was cheerleading, free running, BMXing. That's where I'd really solidified myself alongside school. At kind of 15, again, not knowing too much, I was just running, doing lifting, trying to get more athletic for my sports. I ended up getting a pretty bad injury. So it's called a tricep avulsion. It was a real weird injury because it went wrongly diagnosed for a month as a break, but then obviously it can't heal because it was a whole thing. But fundamentally, I've got a bit of a scar. They had to go into the elbow, pull one of the tricep heads back down, put it in the elbow. And that was a massive point of just derailing me a little bit. Like there was, I'm not going to say it completely totaled my life. Like I was just a normal teenager, so sometimes things are chaotic as a teenager. But it did have quite a big impact on me because up to that point, all my friends had been through sport. My identity wasn't so much that I was like the sporty guy, but you are what you do fundamentally. So I was training all the time, and suddenly I couldn't. And it definitely had an impact on me. I kind of had a summer to reflect after having a surgery, kind of letting it heal. It was about 8-12 weeks. And I was told that it wouldn't work again. Like they just said your arm would be stuck like this. And that was a big hit, right? And it was kind of, just got left there. So I'm going on a very long-winded process here, but it's been a bit of a journey to get there. But then eventually, basically, I just had a checkup appointment where my doctor was sick, and another doctor went, am I allowed to swear? Yeah,
yes,
cool.
Absolutely, yes.
So to quote, he was like, why aren't you moving your arm yet? And I was like, they told me it wouldn't work. He just goes, that's really fucking shit. And then he was like, I reckon you should just try training it. He was like, you can just start pushing it straight, bending it, rebuild the mobility. Didn't really explain progressive overload, but he was just like, try. And I'd already been in the gym a little bit, so I did. And this is where I sort of started finding lifting weights, trying to recover things, because I wasn't able to do the sports I used to do. So got stuck into the gym, kind of skip on 3 years, went to university. I'd started seeing quite a lot of rehab in the elbow. I'd had sort of chronic pain for those 3 years, but over the 3 years, it got more range, it got less painful. And then about at like 19, 20, it was relatively pain-free. I'd, without going into detail in it, sort of gone to a uni, dropped out of a uni, moved to a new one. And in the midst of that, been training with different coaches, because a lot of unis have societies in England. I assume it's very similar in America, societies you can join. And I did the lifting ones because that's what I could do. And ended up finding a gym called Sweatbox, which kind of gave me my start both in getting back into athletic training. So they had some soft mats. I was able to start trying some flips again. Got into martial arts because I was like, I can actually do this again. And then the training kind of found its way back to, okay, how can I perform for athleticism? Because that's really where I wanted to be. I wanted to get back to how I felt. I was like, cool, this injury's gone. So I'd always had this drive towards athletic training, and that's where I got a lot of the fundamental skills and a lot of the experience. But when it really became a bit more of a process for coaching for me was, again, a little bit older. I was about 23. I'd done chemistry as a degree, didn't like it. Ended up finishing towards zoology. Did drop out right before my final exams to pursue a different breed, but that was the way it goes. So got to about 23, started training to be a PT, qualified, passed. Sweatbox gave me a job. And at the same time, I was doing zoology, and a lot of my unit selection around my zoology degree was how animals work, because I find that interesting in terms of I thought looking at how animals perceive the world would give me a bit of an insight into how we perceive the world. There's also some interesting things in terms of where consciousness maybe comes in that you can see in animal behaviour, and also ways they interact with the world. So for me, that was the excitement. But you get into this idea of genetics, animal behaviour, and adaptation. And humans are this very interesting thing that we're really fucking general. There's not much in the world that I can't think of anything that is as adaptable as a person, right? Because in your lifetime, you can run a marathon, you can be super strong, you can, climb trees, and all of that is because humans have a general body plan. We're relatively we migrate and we do different things. So our body has an amazing capacity just to adapt to what we do. Evolutionarily, we are designed to be generalists. We're meant to do everything we do. The stimulus that we simulate in the gym is just to stimulate this natural thing, and we see the adaptation because of that. So I kind of had this moment where there was this isolated point in my academic journey where I was like, oh, humans are really interesting organisms compared to other things because we adapt. At the same time, I just started coaching and I'd been training for athleticism my whole life, seeing that my body was capable of doing a lot of stuff, especially starting as like, I'm a small guy, 5'2", 70-ish kilos, kind of sickly kid. Like, I've got very strong, I've got a lot of things, and it's because my body's adapted. I didn't actually need to have like pristine genetics, you can just train for it. It's really because of that fundamental point of being human, you're adaptable. And these things kind of started merging together, and down the line of coaching, I've just believed in it more and more that it's kind of the way we're meant to train in terms of how our body adapts, and it's the thing that's going to give you the best quality of life because it's how our body regulates. That was a really long yap, I'm very sorry, but to get us through that, I hope that was a clear picture.
I always like to say I am pro ramble. I am pro ramble. I am pro rant. I tell my clients this on calls. I tell my podcast guests I want it raw. I want it exactly how you would describe it, unfiltered. I didn't know you were 5'2". You're built like a brick shithouse, dude. You are a tank. So I didn't know the height thing. Like I have the opposite problem. I'm 6'4", so I've been lifting for a while, and I look like a fucking wet noodle still sometimes. At least I feel
it's so
like
much harder
to fill out, especially now that I've gotten into the running too, and this strength training the intensity on the strength training has gone from 5 days a week. The frequency dropped down to 3. And it's like, I miss it, but also I'm really enjoying running. So trying to do both is just like, I'm trying to be this hybrid athlete. I don't know, are you familiar with 𝕋𝕀𝕂𝕋𝕆𝕂 by chance?
Yes, he was one of the first kind of hybrid people I ever saw. I'm a massive fan.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of 𝕋𝕀𝕂𝕋 from a lot of different perspectives. I love a lot of what he stands for and how he runs it and how disciplined he is. I think it's a little corny because, especially here in the States, there's like a whole breed of like dudes in their mid-20s just kind of trying to become hybrid athletes. I'm not really, I wouldn't call myself anything like that, but that's super fascinating. I'm really curious. I'm fascinated by the zoology thing because I'm also somebody who is deeply fascinated by animals and zoology and environmentalism. My girlfriend and I are both just deeply fascinated by it, and I wanted to ask, what is some of the more interesting things that you picked up studying that degree in terms of what stood out to you the most? Just like maybe a fun fact or something just interesting that you thought was kind of wild. It could be about humans or another animal.
Okay. Do you know what? This is good. This fact I think about all the time. It's not very. I'll give us one relative to sport afterwards. But ants, some ants when they die release a hormone that lets the other ants know they're dead, and they'll go put them in the graveyard. But if you paint it on an ant, they'll go put themselves in the graveyard. And as I said, like, I'm a big believer in that. Like, I wanted to find out a bit more about what consciousness is, because I think like there's something to being human. It's an interesting experience. But I'm like, where does that stop? Because we can see in some animals like there's someone behind the eyes, but like with an ant, they don't know if they're dead. But if I paint my dog with death smell, it doesn't think it's dead. It has a sense of being alive. So that I always found fascinating. In terms of, I'll bring it to sport though. In terms of sport, I think one of the things I found very interesting is this sort of unraveling of genes. The more you train something, or like the more you need something, whether that's like tanning, the more your body will improve its ability to synthesize the protein from your genes. So it will unravel that gene. I think they're wrapped around something called a histone protein. It's been a few years, guys, so go have a Google if you want to get the exact science. But essentially, your DNA is like wrapped around things, and as it unwraps, it becomes easier to access and easier to copy. So when we think about training, when you're training more and more and you're able to express more muscle, a lot of that is actually because you've unwrapped these genes and it becomes easier to express more muscle. And there's things like, increased nuclearization, which I think a lot of people cover with that, like muscle memory, where it's easier to rebuild afterwards. So, when you're training, you're directly interacting with your genes. It's where I come back to the fact we've kind of evolved to do this. These mechanisms we're interacting with are very like primal things. I think, normal training is the way I'm not like a primal trainer. I think the gym's very cool, but I just think it's an interesting thing to think about, that we're actually interacting with things that are core to the fact our species survived for so long.
You're telling me you don't train like a primal where you eat all your food off of a wooden cutting board in the raw?
I'm afraid not.
Berries.
I am full of microplastics.
You're not sunning your balls and you're not avoiding seed oils? Come on now, man. What are you doing? Are you really even a coach? We need to end this.
I know, man. I know.
No, that's fire, man. I love how you put humans are adaptation machines. In a mental sense and in a physical sense, and I love the way you put it. I don't think I could have said it any better myself. the body's going to adapt to the environment you throw it in. And the same thing with the mind, you know, and I talk a lot about this with my clients on a mental level as well. Like, if they're getting overwhelmed, if they're getting burnt out, I don't know about you, but I work with a lot of people who like work from home, for example, and they get really stressed out because then they work from home all day and then they come home, the kids are screaming, they got to make dinner, all this other stuff. They're having a hard time of like getting out of their own head. I'm like, because you need to leave your house. You need to get out of your bubble. And I think a lot of that is, you're meant to, changing your environment has an incredible impact on your mental health. And I think just having the context with that your body and your mind are going to adapt to the surroundings that you give it is an incredibly poignant thought that a lot of people don't know. Because, you know, social media especially has kind of compounded this black and white thinking with just about everything. You can smack one label on something because you saw it on an Instagram post once. You know, it's like the ant thing is awesome, and I think I've actually heard that somewhere before, so that's super cool. Yeah. But like with humans, and like I always bring up the fact that yes, humans are adaptable, but when people talk about how they can't get steps, I'm like, if you have 2 working legs and a beating heart, you can get your step counts. We're bipedal mammals. A huge part when we talk about the whole primal thing as to why we survived in like all the way back like BC caveman times is because we weren't faster than any animal. Like, we were not the fastest, we were not the strongest. We could just keep running. We could just outrun. Like, the other animals are eventually going to get tired, and we sweat through our skin. You know, so we've been able to adapt through so many different periods of history. If you want to start diving into consciousness talk, we're going to have you on another episode because that is
we'll do it one day, man.
Hell of a talk, man. I'm all about that stuff, man. I'm super excited, but I wanted to kind of steer the conversation because I guess we're supposed to be running a podcast here.
Yeah.
What advice and what have you noticed over your years of experience coaching when you talk about building this adaptable body and building this athleticism, this core of athleticism that's going to feed into multitudes of your life and multiple arenas of your life as a normal person? What are some of the key differences and come to some of the key things that you've been able to see that the average person who's just now kind of entering in, maybe they're thinking about this, maybe they're watching this thinking about, I don't know where to get started. I don't know if I want to start with bodybuilding training. I don't know if I should start with running or walking or athleticism training. Where do you typically like to meet a beginner at?
That's a great question. I'll have to... I'm very client-led in the way I coach. So one of the things I always try and do is just, what do they want to do? Like, the biggest thing I'll ask people is, you know, where do you see yourself in a year that aligns with you? Because I think the body really is like this self-identification thing, right? It's the way you express in the world. It's the way you experience the world. So when I think about training, I think about like what's going to make me feel more like me. So I have never really had aesthetic goals. And again, that might be because I've always been blessed to be small. So I'm like, I'm never going to be the biggest guy in the room. I'm not particularly worried about like trying, but I'm like, I'm going to be the best me. And that feels like someone that's powerful, who's got a lot of energy, can do these like cool things, feel strong. And that makes me feel like me. You know, a really good example, I was talking to a client the other day. They've had a bit of an injury. They haven't been training that much and they've just got really stiff. And they described it as they felt uncomfortable in their body, right? And like, so for them, one of these things when we're talking about what do we need to do in the program, we really identified was, well, we just need to get you moving again so you can feel like you're in your body. So when I have a beginner, I think the first place I ask is, you know, where do you see yourself being in your dream body? What does that look like? Because we don't necessarily need to start with the athletic training because it doesn't really matter. Like in the grand scheme of things, if you're doing something, it's good for your health. Like when we tick health boxes, it's like, are you walking? Are you doing a little bit of high intensity exercise? Like if you jump on the assault bike 3 times a week, you're probably going to do more than enough cardio to sort out your health. If you do a couple strength training sessions and then like a sports session, a dance class, you're good for your health. So beyond that, it really, to me, is self-expression. So I know that's a bit of a like round answer, but essentially I'd try and find out, you know, what do they care about? And if that is, it's like I get out of breath when I play with my kids and I hate it and it makes me feel sad, then cool, let's focus on getting cardio in, you know. If there's someone who's confident to get into the gym 4 times a week, sure, we're going to blend that with some strength training, some plyometrics, because I think a beginner, as much as an advanced athlete, the training looks the same, the exercise selection changes. Do you know what I mean? There's the structure of the workout's the same, the exercise selection changes. But if there's someone who's maybe struggling, then cool, let's just start with a bit of cardio. I actually think I saw a video from yourself talking about something similar to this, where you said just go into the gym for a couple of weeks for 30 minutes. And I thought that's amazing. Just set the habit. So depending on the type of person in front of me, if committing's really difficult, maybe we'll just find one thing that they're going to be able to get a quick win in their life and feel it. And that can then set the motivation for the rest. If there's someone who can do it, they just haven't, then generally I'll go a bit wider range, but it will always be angled towards the thing they really want to feel for themselves.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up. I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's also a coach, and he focuses mostly on the weight loss space and mostly entirely around nutrition and relationship with food stuff, and that's very important, and he's really, really good at what he does. But he was talking about, like, I just don't know how to program workouts for other people yet. And I'm like, kind of approached it in the same way you do. It's just like, I give people programs based off of what the hell they want. You know, if somebody, like I have, like you said, if there's a dad who wants to be able to, like I have a client right now who is down close to 80 pounds. And one of his big
awesome.
goals was he wanted to enter into a wrestling tournament with his son, because his son wrestles, and apparently there's like this intramural thing where they can do it as like a team situation, which is super dope. But he needed to lose like 150 pounds to get there. But I'm like, what a fucking killer motivator for that. Let's get you on strength training. Let's get you into better cardiovascular shape, and let's obviously fix the diet and the deficit and make sure you stay satisfied. And that's where we focused, and we haven't really deviated away from that. We're just making sure he can stick to that. And it's worked tremendously well. For other people, I have people who are trying to go that by choice want to be vegan, and so we're trying to build a physique around that. It ultimately comes down to, what do you want? And I feel like that's almost a skill nowadays that a lot of people are lacking, surprisingly. I don't know about you, but I've met and spoke with a lot of people that sometimes people don't necessarily know what they want, which is fascinating, especially when it comes to health and fitness. If they're inexperienced, they know what they think they want because of what they're seeing on social media, but they haven't had enough of a taste to figure out what it is that they actually want. I think that kind of causes a lot of wonky expectations for different parts of the journey, which is definitely a fascinating thing to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think you're kind of bang on the money there. People think they know what they want from what they see on social media. And I think, unfortunately, this lack of necessarily knowing where you want to go, I think, is a reflection of the fitness industry on a whole. Because we, as a group, prescribe things. We say, this is what you do, this is how it works, this is what you want. We don't talk about the more general element of it. And I think this is an interesting thing about being a coach and a business owner, is that, like, I always think that coaching and business owning are kind of diametrically opposed to each other. Like, if you want to drive a business, you want to drive a message. If you're a coach, you want to drive nuance. If you want to run a business, you want to drive profit. If you're a coach, you want to do things for free. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of, and it's because, and I mean, it's hard to necessarily blame it on a political spectrum, but I think it's fair to say a lot of business owners, at least that I see coming out of America or even in England in the big space, are quite right-wing in their leaning, and that often brings in quite like individualistic elements to want to drive money, right? And I think that leads into treating fitness like business. And that is what you see on the high level, and that gets pushed to the average coach, and that gets then disseminated to everyone. And a lot of it is about, cool, how can we run coaching for business profit? And I run a business. I like capitalism and I like profit. I'm not going to pretend that that's something I don't want, but there's an element between trying to make as much money as you can, and I think we've all either worked with a coach who's done that, I certainly have, who've just kind of rinsed you for money, and in it's an uncomfortable situation, right? Or you can work with people who, sure, you pay them a decent thing, but they give you your fucking service worth, and part of that can often just be saying, what do you want? And I don't think that comes through in content and talking about the more general elements of things, because people want to drive those sales and make it very individualistic. I think we can coexist with both, but yeah, I think it's just a reflection of the fact that we have this very intense tie to hard business philosophy, not necessarily what's best for people in coaching.
And I think I love that you brought that up, because I was talking to a couple people about this. I've had this conversation a few times now. I started posting, I kind of fell into this. This was not plan A, and it doesn't, from your story, it doesn't sound like this was necessarily plan A for you either, right? And so we kind of fell into this as, you know, plan C, D, F, whatever, right? I started posting, just kind of documenting my journey around the 45 pounds mark. That was late summer, early fall of 2020. So I've been posting on social media, at least talking about fitness and in the fitness space, heavy quotation marks there, for about 5 years now. So I've seen a pretty big evolution, and I think you are right on the money, but I think another thing to note about why it feels so shitty to be a part of the fitness space right now and consuming fitness content, why it feels like the truth and impact are like getting shoved to the bottom, and seed oils and arguing over nothing and lying and taking SARMs and juicing, and people are now promoting like gambling, like massive fitness creators are just like taking like steak deals and stuff. It's crazy. I think a huge part of that, I think you're right on the money, that they're trying to treat their only motivation, their primary mover for entering the fitness space is because they see it as a vehicle to make a shitload of money. They are not entering the space to make an impact. You and I have both had hardships in our younger years that have led to us and molded us to who we are, where we like making an impact. We both have in-person training experience, if I'm not mistaken. You've done in-person training a little bit, yeah? Okay,
yeah,
so yes.
For a couple of years.
Yeah, so probably more than me as far as in-person goes. And we wanted to make an impact. And online just fit better. We could reach more people doing it in an online space. Doesn't make us money. Do we make a profit? Absolutely. But you and I think we both know we could go make more money if we wanted to sell out in certain ways, start taking those Calorie AI app brand deals, start selling the one-off, completely pointless and aimless programs with no accountability. They're going to buy it and never touch it again. And so some of these bigger creators or some of these younger kids who haven't really had any major struggle, had a six-pack because they were just lean as a kid, went to the gym for 2 years, maybe took a little bit of test, and now they're trying to run a $6,000 course or what have you. Their driver is no longer impact and change for the common person. The driver is now, I want to make a shit ton of money, and this seems like the easiest path to do it. And it's created a sense of grifting that has now rose to the top because they're just manipulating social media. They're manipulating the algorithms in the sense of, let me get, I'm not trying to be weird or anything, but let me get a bunch of girls in really tight spandex shorts and put them in the thumbnail so people click on it. And then we start talking about Ozempic or start talking about SARMs and all these things. It's like the dad who's 38, who just had his second kid, who's just trying to lose 40 pounds and be there for his kids, doesn't care about that. The single mom who's just trying to be healthy, or they don't even have to be parents, just the guy who's working and wants to feel better in his own skin, that's working his tail off and wants to have something else to build towards, doesn't care about that. They're selling to a younger audience who is gullible. And like you said, I think you nailed it right on the head, and it's definitely been quite the journey to see that transformation over the years, but I'm happy to know that there are other people out there, not to say that I haven't made mistakes or anything, but it's happy to know that there are other people out there that do still are still impact first over anything else. I wanted to ask you, just a little bit more about your coaching. Is it mostly around athleticism training primarily? And B, what would you say are some of the best lessons that you've learned as a coach? Because I think a lot of people don't realize when you are a coach to several people, especially one-on-one, you learn a ton. Like talking to that many people, they teach you almost just as much as you teach them.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, our coaching does kind of, I think the way you would describe it is center around athleticism, but what we really propose it as is with our clients is like, we're looking to help you live with the best quality of life as you can, whether that's, making sure your diet's on point and looking after your health, whether that's helping you set up lifestyle habits that are more conducive to your success, and of course, pursuing physical fitness and health through the use of athletic training. If you lean more to like a strength athlete and that's really what you're passionate about, we work with powerlifters who just want to feel good. There's plenty of powerlifters who are great powerlifters, but they end up, destroying their backs because their coaches should never take the time to put in some stuff to look after their backs. They end up losing all their cardio. We're not against you necessarily having specific goals. We just want to make sure you're treating your body as a generalist organism as it is and making sure it stays in a good position. For other people, they do come to us and they're just like, I want to be the most athletic weapon I possibly can. So the client, I can think of a guy called Rayo Flores. He's a wrestler. And like, he just wants to be the best wrestler of all time. It's like entertainment wrestling. And like for him, it's all power, strength. I want to look whammo. And I mean, and it works. Like the other day, I I always watch the video every now and again. I look it up because it's crazy. He runs out the ring, side flips like 4 feet, and just like knees someone in the face. And it's like there are people we have who like that is the goal. But at the same time, like my mum worked with our coaches, and like she just wanted to get a bit healthier after a hip surgery and, well, hip replacement, I should say. It was a pretty big one. And just feel good in her 60s. And that's it. She works with our coach, Tim. It's a little bit of diet. She doesn't get into the macros. She just sends photos, uses sensible approaches, and then does, some pretty standard strength training with a bit of plyometrics and a bit of cardio. And for her, that's what she needs and wants. So we take that athletic approach, but to meet people where they're at, basically. And just to double check, your second question was, what sort of things have I learned from coaching people? Is that online, in person? Is there any angle you want me to take there?
Just kind of what you've learned on the human element, and what you found as maybe something you didn't expect, something that you learned. I mean, it can be online, it can be in person, it can be something you learned last week. Like, what is just something that you feel like you've learned? Because I can think of a couple of things as well.
Yeah. Oh, I think mine would 100% be that the soft skills as a coach matter way more than the technical hard skills of programming. Like, it is about being able to connect with a human being in front of you. And now my greatest focus as a coach in terms of the way I look to improve is I'm trying to do better check-ins. I want to ask better questions. I want to make my clients open up more, and I want to feel like I'm really understanding them and making them feel heard, and then delivering a great program off the back of that. But I can be the best technical programmer in the world. If I don't know the program that will actually make the client happy, get their goals right, be fun for them, they'll be able to stick to it because it fits their time frame, and then help that client set up a lifestyle that is conducive to doing it, motivate them to do it. The best program in the world is useless if you can't do all these other things. So I think for me, the biggest thing is actually it's a lot about the person underneath. So when you're a coach, you need to be focusing on the person underneath and really looking to support them. And when you're taking that from the client perspective, or when you're training yourself, focus on the soft stuff, the bigger things, like focus on your mental health, make sure you're in a good place, because it's hard to follow a gym plan if you don't do that. I think things like that really take care of the fundamentals.
Yeah, absolutely. I really couldn't agree more. For me, when I'm working with people, it really comes down to, I've learned that if I lead with a little bit more vulnerability, because I found that as a coach, people seem to think that, and not everybody thinks this, obviously, but I've been told a couple times that, oh, well, you're the coach, you're supposed to have everything perfect. I wish I had everything perfect,
yeah.
Right? Wouldn't that be nice,
yeah.
And so I think leading with vulnerability and showing that, the consistency looks ugly even for people who do it professionally, right? And leading with that vulnerability and almost starting some of those conversations with your clients saying, hey, I fucked up hard this week. Here's how I'm backing my word up, and here's how I'm showing up today. How are you feeling? And when you can lead with that vulnerability first, it allows them to feel comfortable enough to open up, and then those usually become the best clients, because then they feel comfortable enough opening up to you. When I was younger in my coaching journey, I remember there was a couple of people, not too many. There was just one or two who I know weren't showing all of their eating, for example. And I'm a weight loss coach, so the nutrition side of things is 80% of the work that I do. It's largely the relationship with, this is Doodle, by the way.
Oh, hello, Doodle.
And I remember I make it very clear. It's we are here to remove the shame and the guilt aspect of it. I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned is, as somebody who has now been removed from that weight loss, I'm a little bit less connected to that feeling of guilt and that feeling of shame, especially after a binge, right, or a shitty day of eating, right? And a big thing that I have now started doing, especially when somebody's joining the program, is, hey, this is a guilt-free environment, right? This is something that doesn't do anything for us. Holding guilt does nothing for you, and hiding things from me only makes the entire experience worse for you, right? I'm going to say it. I've got a different client who did just cross the 80 pounds threshold, different person. His name's Carter. And he just told me today that Carter, I talk about Carter all the time, and he's totally okay with me sharing this. He had a binge the other night, recently, and he's been with me for about 5 months. He's down 80 pounds in total because he had started losing about 30 pounds before we started working together. So he's crushing it on the weight loss thing. But he's like, hey, I just want to be transparent. Here's what happened on Monday. It bled into Tuesday, but I'm feeling good now. that is what I need, and that is what you need as a coach. That's what you need to have, and what the expectation you need to set for yourself if someone's going to come in and help you, whether you're in a group coaching community, whether you've got just your friend Bob from work is showing up and you guys are leaning on each other. Be open when you fuck up, because that's the only way you're going to improve, right? I heard a quote the other day. I think I found it on Instagram or somewhere. It said, everything is a win when the goal is experience. And that's kind of the mindset I try to instill within my people. It's like, you're either going to see some killer results, or you're going to learn why you're not seeing killer results, and then be able to apply the lessons from those learning moments and then see some more killer results. So it's a win-win scenario if you have that mindset, and dropping that guilt being, I always like to say the guilt is the least efficient emotion. So those are probably some of the bigger things that I have learned. So yeah, man, I love that. I wanted to ask you one last kind of major topic today, because I definitely want to have you back on so we could save a lot of these other topics for the future, because I'm having a lot of fun today. I would love to hear some of your perspective on somebody watching this. What are the risks of not training?
It's a great question. I mean, there's kind of two angles you could come at that. Yeah, I think you can look at it medically or socially, or even personally. So, I mean, kind of like to check all three, medically I think is very obvious. Like, you're going to deal with health problems if you don't train. That's just a reality, whether that's cardiovascular health or things like osteoporosis, which can be solved with strength training. That's not to say that there's one training method you need to do that covers it all. I think, again, we come back to this idea, the body regulates itself off of a wide range of stimulus. That's what happens when I talk for too long. A wide range of stimulus, right? And it's one of those things, you need to give your body that wide range of stimulus, and that's the reality. If you want to live with a better quality of life, if you want to feel good day to day, if you want to live longer and spend more time with your loved ones, like, you need to train and look after your medical health. A great example of this I can think of is my grandpa. So he's trained his whole life. Really active guy, pretty healthy. He did have a heart attack at one point, but he survived it, and he started taking his health even more seriously. He's 88, very independent, but unfortunately recently, as he's got older, he's had a thing go wrong with his ear, so now he can't balance. So he's still trying to train, but as you age, these things are going to happen. But luckily for him, he was able to creep close to 90 with pretty much functioning like a normal human being, day to day. Sure, he's not going to maybe run down a police dog and support it in a police raid, but he could walk about, he could swim, he could live independently with absolutely no problems. And it's a small medical issue that's taken it away, and that you can't train your ears, that's just going to happen. But I think you can reflect on potentially, if you get osteoporosis young, if you get a case of preventable arthritis young, obviously there's different types, or you start having heart problems young, it can really have a knock-on effect there. If we look personally, I think the big one to come back to is you might not feel like you are expressing like yourself. If your body doesn't feel like you do in your head, that's kind of shit. And that might just be aesthetically, like, you just might you might feel better with bigger arms. Like, if you've got a partner, you probably want to feel sexy when you take your top off. Like, no one wants their partner to look at them and think that you look shit. Like, and it's a very, a kind of surface level thing, but, it's a reality. And of course, your partner's love isn't going to be dictated on how you look. There's a whole conversation to be had there. A lot of that will be personal confidence, but still, it's a very real emotion. We are all human, as much as we can take that more, philosophical lens around it. We all feel insecure sometimes, right? And you don't want to have that when you're with your partner. And then I think when you look on more of a societal level, the more unhealthy you are, the less capable you are, the less you can really give back. And again, this is something we need to be careful when we speak about, if you are, say, someone with a disability, maybe your physical skill is not the thing you give back to your society as your primary means of that. But at the same time, even if you have a disability, training is going to be something that takes care of your health. It's going to allow you to be more independent, and there are personal benefits. Just the way we might frame the differences are slightly different. But for someone like myself, I'm an only child of two parents who are starting to get older. If I'm not physically capable, I'm not able to support them. It could be as simple as my mum needed some stones moved up the garden. The garden of the house I grew up in has 30 stairs. My mum is 60 with a hip replacement. It's not easy for her to carry 20 bags up like that. But if I pop round to her house and she says, "Can you help me out?" I can do it. And there's that level of ability to give societal support. I think, that one needs to be careful in the way we word it. I don't want to say that everyone has a physical duty to society. There is a more nuanced conversation to be had there. But I think if we look on a more general scale of, just for the sake of a conversation of people day to day, you're kind of always going to be balancing somewhere between these three things of personal, social, and medical things you miss out on if you're not training. Which ones are of most value to you will depend on you as an individual, and which ones pertain to you in that respect. But there's 1,000 different reasons under each of those categories, and I think you've really just got to identify them for yourself. That's what's top of funnel to me and how I view the ones for myself. Again, different for everyone, but yeah, I can probably pass that back to you and say, how do you view the risks of not training, and how do you rationalize it for yourself?
Well, for me, tossing you such a broad question, I think you absolutely nailed it, dude. That was a very thought out answer. So that's definitely, I agree with virtually every single thing that you said with 100% stamp of approval. Another layer to some of the things that you were also saying, I do think, I talk a lot about, there's a lot of talk about masculinity nowadays and what that should be. I like the idea of we should be talking a lot less about what a good man should be and just go be one instead. And I think a lot of confidence in general, dropping, man, woman, anybody else, capability is where confidence is going to come from. Confidence comes from stacking a giant pile of proof that you are who you say you are. And like you said, there should be a connect of how you view yourself, how you want to be, and what you actually look like. Now, again, that's just your shell. There are going to be aspects, like I got loose skin from the weight loss, so it's harder for me to see my abs, and it's harder for me to see my abs be super duper defined. And I don't love the way it looks sometimes. I don't mind it at all other days. It's an evolution. It changes, right? It comes in cycles. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I can run the furthest I've ever been able to, and I can lift. Now, I want to improve. I actually had kind of a heart-to-heart with myself. It's an ongoing relationship, and I think that's the biggest thing, too. It's something you owe to yourself if you are able-bodied, because this is something that you get to do. Exercise is a privilege. Exercise is something you were given the opportunity to do. And, a lot of people can say, oh, well, we're humans. We're born to move. Yeah, some people weren't given the capacity to do that.
Yeah.
And so if you are sitting here able-bodied talking about why your life is X, Y, Z, and I get people come on hardships. I'm not here to start a conversation around that. Again, requires more nuance. But I hate to see it where you don't have to go be a bodybuilder. You don't have to go compete in marathons. But if you moved your body and realized how much of a gift it is, it has been some of the most transformational mental medicine that I have ever had, right? I went from a place of hating myself. I had a very skewed relationship with who I was, and it bled into my person. It bled into, I never finished what I started before I started exercising regularly. I was a lot of talk, no show up. A lot of talk, no walk, right? I lacked confidence talking to women. I was a step over in my friend group. I let disrespect come at me all the time, right? So from a personal confidence perspective, yeah, I want to like the way I look, and I want to feel confident in my ability. When a fit hits the shan, I can take care of business. But on top of that, I need to know it up here. And if I'm the one that no one else is going to see you show up unless you post every single fucking time on Instagram that you're going to work out, which a lot of people do, so be it, whatever. But you're the only one, you're going to be the one that sees how you show up. You're going to be the one that shows up at 4 a.m. or at 9 o'clock at night. Like, it's going to be a late lift for me tonight. Like, I'm not going to go to the gym until probably closer to 8 o'clock tonight. So be it. I'm going to be the one that shows myself, like, I know I was here. Check that box. No one else needs to know. I know I was there. And so that builds that proof, that builds that confidence. And it really does clear your head. A moving body. There's a big quote that floated around Instagram again a couple months ago: depression hates a moving target. And it kind of connects back to what I was saying earlier. As somebody who's had his life very heavily affected by depression, like I said, changing your environment, moving your body, that is some of the greatest medicine you can. It's in my opinion, one of the greatest antidepressants out there, and it's free. It doesn't require insurance. So if you view exercise as something that you get to do and not something you have to do, it's something that's a privilege. It's something that you were gifted, and you should be taking the most and taking advantage of it, on top of all the other layers of being able to help the ones that you love, being able to be capable to give back to society or to your friends or to your family, and have that connected I like the way I look. I like the way I feel. I am who I say I am. I'm not perfect, but I like how I am. Not many people can say that. And exercise is going to get you a hell of a lot closer to that marker. It's not going to get you all the way. There's a lot of other stuff that's tied into it. But I'm really big on just showing gratitude for what your body is able to do. And since I work a lot with weight loss clients, it's let's find all the ways that your body is a limiting factor and try to check them out one by one. So you don't need the seatbelt extender on the weight loss, or don't need the seatbelt extender on the airplane, right? So you can go on the roller coasters with your kids when you go to the amusement parks, right? So you can bend down and tie your shoes without groaning like an old man, right? Not be winded going up the stairs, not be scared to go play a game of flag football with your son. All of these different things. These are all limiting factors, and they're not always connected to weight. These are just the ones that I see often because I'm in the weight loss space, but we could name hundreds. So it's about building. My term is, I want to be unfuckwithable. My body can do whatever I want it to do. I'm unfuckwithable. Nobody can fuck with me because my body can do whatever I want it to do. And that's kind of where I like to kind of frame the negatives of not losing or not exercising, because it's not always about weight loss.
100%. I really like what you said there. Sorry guys, I'm just going to dry my head with sweat. I've got no air conditioning for the audio quality, and I'm feeling myself getting drippy.
This one's on me. We had some audio issues a couple episodes ago, so I politely asked him to turn off his AC, and he's like, I will gladly do it, but I might be a little sweaty, so this one is on me. Luckily, we're turning up to the end so the AC can turn back on. That one's on me, folks.
All good. We got to push through sometimes for the content. It's part of the job. But I love what you said. Like, a healthy body really is a privilege, and that's something that I actually think about a lot for myself, and I'd really like to echo, because at some point in your life, you're going to lose your healthy body. Like, that's the reality. I really hope for all of you, it is like basically a disease gets you 2 days and you're gone. Like, if you're lucky, that's going to be your loss of your body, and you can live functionally normally up till then. If you were unlucky, it will be a lot sooner. That might be something like a car crash, but, we've all sat and watched what's gone on in Gaza. Regardless of your political opinion, what that should make you realise is that you can be a child in an area and you can have your legs blown off. And you can lose that ability for your body. Like, if you are someone who has a healthy body, you are genuinely lucky, because it will get taken one day, and it's a matter of time. Your training is your ability to extend that time the best you can. Even with that being said, it might not happen. Something can get you at any time. But yeah, I think that's so important to view it as a gift, because it really is, and you've got to find a way to enjoy training. There's a lot around that. You can't just naturally hard-nosed be like, this is a gift, so I must do it. But it is truly worth, reflecting on, I think, sometimes. And, it can be hard for people to do that. What I would say is, if you're someone who's in a relationship, reflect on how grateful you are for your relationship and the fact people lose their partner quickly. That sort of emotion, that sort of upset that you get. I've been with Emily for a couple of years now, and I'm fair to say this is the most intimate relationship I had. I'm experiencing these feelings for the first time of having a long-term partner. I'm like, holy shit, what if they just die? And that's the only worry. But you should have that almost same fear when you think about your body. And that's not to say you should walk around your life anxious. That's not good. But when you think you're not training, if you've gone 3-4 weeks, you've not done anything to honour your body in a sense, whether that's eating well, training, or maybe all of it, really what we should be doing, you should start getting that fear, because this is not something you get forever, and you kind of need to, put the money in to keep it, as it were.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan. When I was kind of entering into the weight loss and the exercise and just going nose deep into self-improvement across a lot of different facets in my life, I'm a big philosophy nerd. I like a lot of philosophy, and like I said, the consciousness thing is incredibly fascinating to me. Yeah. But what I think a way to also put what you said, which is perfectly said, but also just kind of a reminder on that, to keep that gratitude more forefront, you're gonna die. Yeah. Nobody gets out alive. Nobody gets out alive. Everyone dies. And so the more you can think about that, obviously when you first initially say that, it sounds scary, it sounds terrifying. Of course it does. But then when you can really chew on it just for a little bit and recognize, I only have so many wake-ups left. I only have so many weeks left. And when you can frame it in that sense, and I'm a big gamer, I grew up playing a lot of video games, so it's like, I'm going to increase my health bar the best that I can. Sure, I understand that there's always the freak accidents where, God forbid, knock on wood, but I have no control over it. Maybe there's a drunk driver one day, and I have no control over that. I don't know any freak accidents. Maybe I get struck by lightning one day. I have no control over stuff like that. But when it comes to taking care of my health and what happens to me and not letting my body deteriorate because it's a machine built of flesh, it's going to, I want to maximize the good years that I have. So I'm glad that you put it that way. And I don't know fear, I think it's just being, that awareness is just incredibly important. And sometimes it does need to be fear. Sometimes you need to be a little kick in the ass a little bit, especially if you've been neglecting it for too long. But I wanted to say that, if you can think about your own mortality, it can end up being more freeing and allow you to kind of, I woke up, had a cup of coffee, pet my dogs, went for a walk in the morning. It's like, this is fucking awesome. My body lets me do this. That's really cool. I'm not going to be able to have this forever, So, Tarun, I've absolutely loved this conversation, dude, and I, honest to God, want to keep going. But I think if I keep talking, you're going to start sweat dripping down both sides of your brow.
It's going to be coming up. Hey, man,
right.
I've loved it, though. I've got to say, it's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Yes, likewise, man. We'll definitely have you on again. But I wanted to give you a chance to plug your stuff, man. Tell everybody who's listening, where can they find your stuff? I'm going to have your links in the description, but if you have anything you want them to go check out, be my guest, go do that. All I ask is you also leave them with a little nugget of wisdom, advice, or something to leave them with.
Okay, well, if you want to follow me, I'm coach_Tarun on Instagram. That is really where I do most of the content that's based around myself, and then obviously the business that I have with my business partners is Different Breed Coaching, and you can look that up on YouTube. We're Different Breed Coaching on YouTube, and on Instagram we are Different Breed Coaching, and we have a website which is Different Breed Coaching. So it's pretty easy to go and find. It's either my name or Different Breed Coaching. And in terms of leaving you with something, I'll do a little bit of a shameless plug. We do have a new education platform, as it were, releasing called the Different Breed Academy, and that is just where I've done a bit of synthesizing all the basics I think you need to know about your training, which is going to be releasing this week, which is why it's front of mind. It is something that you can just pick up and then you will have access to it forever, and it's worth checking out if you've ever really wanted to dive into some more of the different things that we do, but absolutely no pressure. You can also go on my Instagram and find loads of information too, but little shameless plug. And let me give you a piece of wisdom. So I'm going to say, if you are someone who wants to get into athletic training, the easiest way to really start figuring it out is pick a bit of a generalist sport. So what I mean by that is you're going to look at something like rugby, gymnastics, maybe CrossFit. CrossFit's kind of not really a sport, it's sort of gym work, so a bit of a rogue one, but let's use it for this example. MMA, but basically a sport that requires you to use a lot of different athletic qualities. Something like MMA, you can think power, cardio, strength, mobility, more strength endurance, power endurance, but of course maximal's a bit of a part of it. Think about rugby, similar things, gymnastics, mobility, strength, an element of cardio, but all those sorts of things. And if you find one you like, do it a couple of times a week and structure your training to support it, you will be training very generally and looking after your health through the use of athletic training. And I think that's something everyone can benefit from. Really easy way to frame what you should be doing without getting too deep into the weeds.
I think that's really well put. If you just pick one sport and hit some of those elements that are required for that sport, you're going to feel the translation in anything else that you do. If you're playing another sport or just doing something else. I love basketball. I'm a huge basketball player. So a lot of plyo, a lot of agility, tons of cardio, right? And so for me, if I'm playing a full court game, it is exponentially easier now for me to play a full court game of basketball. I'm one of the biggest dudes out there, and I'm usually outrunning a lot of the guys that I play with just purely out of the fact that I'm running so fucking much outside of the gym, because of the marathon training. So the things translate super quickly. I love that little tidbit. Go check out all of Tarun's stuff down in the description below. He makes really excellent content, absolutely worth a follow on Instagram. And if you are interested in the athletic training, by all means, go check this man out. He's got nothing but good stuff. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. I've got some other goodies down in the description below. Go check them out. I love you all to death. Keep it simple, big fella. Bam.